All right, everybody, I hope you're doing well. This is part 4 of the Camper 9.0 build, and the framing is complete. We're going to talk about that today, and man, she is a beauty. At least I think so. You guys tell me what you think here. So later today, the framing is officially complete. I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of sanding on something here and there that I notice as I go, but today I'm going to start putting some of the skin on. Now, I also have something kind of exciting for you guys. I have a giveaway. There is an asymmetry in this build, and it's not the rear. Obviously, the door is off to one side, and that is not the asymmetry I'm talking about. But there is an asymmetry someplace else in this build. And as you guys watch, if someone correctly identifies it, and you live in the lower 48, because I am mailing it on my own dime, I am giving away this KOSPET Tank T3 smartwatch. I reviewed it, I don't know, about a week ago, I believe. It's actually a really nice watch, retails for about $120. I'll cover the details at the end of the video, but there is a giveaway opportunity just for fun. All right, let me throw this bad boy on a tripod. Gosh, I think it looks really nice. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. But we have a lot to get into. Let me throw this camera on a tripod, and I will start covering what I've done since the last video and a couple key pointers that I learned. All right, everybody, just a brief recap. Part 3 last video, I had completed the floor for the Cabover as a modular component, meaning I built it outside of the camper. And at the very end of the video, you guys saw I transferred it over and I slid it into place, but it was not installed. So a lot has been done since then. As you guys can see right now, even without the skinning on this, the Cabover is completely self-supportive. It's very rigid, not a bit of flex. I don't have a final weight as it stands right now, but as you guys can see, this thing is super light, super strong. Okay, so what I did is we slid in the Cabover, some glue and screws, simply attached it because I had this this little section right here that it rested on. Down below, let me make sure the camera is picking this up. So down below, right down here, is you guys could see some framing. In this center section right here is going to be a simple shed window, and that will allow not a physical pass through in the sense that your body could pass through, but you could pass objects back and forth to the center opening of the window that's in my particular truck, an F-150. And it also allows a visual, so if you were inside and you wanted to look through the windshield of the truck, you could there. So I got this framing in there. This helped add some rigidity too from a structural standpoint. Just laminated boards. Of course, I fit it to fit the window. And then these little supports are just supports that are centered on this position. Let's move up here to the top. And I will get into some nitty and gritty lessons learned when it comes to this curve. Let me just cover some of the basics. So in the last video, the floor was essentially made, but I had built this very micro column and beam section. As I talked about in detail in the last video, this 45-degree angle right here matches the rest of these, okay? And this front clip, if you can imagine, is really just the same thing as if this was tilted over and set on end, okay? And I think now that you guys see the poplar that's pulled over, you can see the rationale for that. But I don't believe I talked about how I made these 45 degrees. Now you guys will see, if you look carefully, this looks a little rough right here. I actually kind of had to, this was planned, but I had to shape this a little bit so when I put the panel over it, it will sit flat on here. But anyways, this is how I made the 45-degree angle. I made a little template right here, okay? So, let's move over to this one. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay. All right. So this is the column, Okay, this one's a little thicker, but just bear with me here. Laminated pieces. Now what I would do is long piece, and then this would be a drop down. And then, like I said, this is my template. You guys can make these. There's a rhyme or reason. But see this little flat part right here? This is 1.5 inches long. Okay, so that's the same width as this column piece. This slides down in there. So coming up to the top here is the two outside pieces. Okay, is that making sense? So this lower piece is dropped down by the factor of the height of this. I think this is 2.25 inches. It doesn't matter the way that you would make yours. It could vary slightly. So then this sits in there. Two pieces laminated here, one down at the bottom. Okay, and that's clamping over this like this. Okay, so like imagine that's the laminated piece. And then I made one of these on each side. That glues in there like this. Okay, this is sitting at a 45-degree angle. This connection point via the glue joint is connected to the two outside column beams and the centerpiece. And then this right here, as you guys can kind of see here as a mirror image, is the thickness of the beam section. Again, laminated, two pieces laminated in the outside. The piece that's in the center of that beam is shorter and lines up right there. I made this template and I just cut all the individual pieces because I think, what do I have, 6 here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6, or a total of 12, because there's there's one on each side of these angled pieces to identify this 45-degree angle. Hope that's useful. If it's not, I'll let me know in the comments and I can go back over it in the next video. Okay. So, column and beam sections, floor of the Cabover in. Now the real magic happens, and that is defining this two-plane arc. And what I mean by a two-plane arc is, as opposed to just 8.0, where it was just a vertical wall and the roof meshing up for a single arc, this is two-plane in the sense that we have a 90, a 45. This is about a 10-inch span. And then, so we actually had to have 2 support sections because the arc is going to be sitting on a 45-degree plane like this. I'm sure you guys all obviously see that. Now, what I talked about before, this is the first time I've done something like this. And in my mind, when I was designing this camper, I could visualize it, and I had some ideas of how I would execute it, and I was pretty sure that it would work as planned. But like I said, I wasn't 100% sure. I did some mock-ups that improved my confidence, but I had to acknowledge in my mind that there was a possibility this idea wouldn't work out. Well, spoiler alert, it's going to work. So from a technically challenging standpoint, getting this made, this is probably the hardest and most unknown part of this build. So I would make the argument that perhaps the hardest part of this build and the most unknown part of this build is now complete. Obviously, you know, I've skinned these campers before. That can be a tricky process unto itself, depending on certain areas, and it certainly will be so to try to make sure that we maintain this consistent arc. But I've done that before, and I know it will work. So I'm very happy, though. This worked out. It made it super strong. A lot of you guys, when I was talking about this arc, talked about how strong this camper would be. And you guys are absolutely right. Right now, this is just the frame. And other than the camper sliding on the ground, I mean, this thing is super rigid, almost zero flex in the body. Very, very light. I mean, as you guys can see, me moving this thing around, it moves around really easy. Let's do a little experiment here. Let's see. I'll show you guys just how rigid this is. And you guys will also get a sense for how light this thing is too. So I'm just going to lift this up at the Cabover section. Let's see if you guys can see that in the video here. I should be able to. But I mean, one-handed. Look at that. I don't think there's a bit of flex in this structure. That's amazing. Super light too. I apologize, I didn't add up the weight right now, but it's probably weighing somewhere 150, 160 pounds. Okay, so how did I do this? Let me pull this camera off. We're gonna roll in a little bit closer here. Okay, keep in mind that this is not meant to be a cosmetic finish right here, because there will be skinned later. Okay, so these pieces, the curved pieces of wood, this is poplar. It's a hardwood. Now I bought a big, I think it was like a 13-foot long section, because one of the critical things to making this curve happen is it's got to be one continuous piece of wood, okay? If it wasn't, you would have one heck of a time, I'm not going to say it's impossible, keeping a consistent arc. And what I mean by a consistent arc is on certain spreads. Now I know it looks almost flat, but there is actually a subtle arc. Let me go back into normal. There we go. On like these wide spreads, or if there was a gap, the wood wants to flatten out. It doesn't naturally want to arc like this. Maybe a little bit in some places, but it's very, very challenging to get that. And one of the lessons I learned on 8.0, and I extended to this, is you got to use that long, consistent piece of wood to get that. So I bought a big, long section of poplar, and then I cut it down. Now, if you look right here at this cross section, I cut essentially a triangle piece of poplar, okay? Because there are some pretty significant curves in this, and I actually split and broke two of these that I had cut at various points. But I cut that triangle piece, okay? And if you guys recall from the other videos, actually, let me do this. If you guys can, I know, sorry, I'm doing a one hand here, so bear with me, but, well, let's do this way. So right here, there would be a little notch that I had to cut out, okay? Or no, I'm sorry, down here. There's a little notch that I had to cut out, okay? Because there's and this bottom piece rests in that. So if you imagine a piece of plywood lying across here, it's going to come down and mesh up at this at a 45-degree angle, and it's going to mesh up at this one at a 45-degree angle. It's not going to be absolutely perfect because there's going to be slight twists, but it's got to be pretty close, which it is in this case. That's why I cut it at a triangle, but it was also allowed me to more easily bend this wood over, okay? So we cut two triangle pieces below the arc, or the angle of this 45-degree angle on this one. It would fit inside that notch. This one sat on top. Well, what you guys see is I built the columns, but this 3/4 inch space up here on the top, I took just some 3/4 inch plywood. I put some construction adhesive in there. I nailed it down with a brad nailer, and I was able to adjust the angle to match the angle of what this roof line is going to be. See it from there to the top. That way, when I mount that roof 1/4 inch ply skin on top, it's going to have a nice surface area to attach to as it comes down that arc. And it also, of course, fills up the gap, because when I set this top piece on top of here, it sat above, it sat proud of this beam. That's all by design. I visualized in my mind exactly how I would do that, and that was by design. But the point is those triangle pieces made it easy to bend, but they also created a nice flat plane for the attachment of the plywood that will be run across this 45-degree, or this curvature here that's set at a 45-degree angle to the side wall and the roof of the camper. I'm hoping I'm making sense here, guys. I'm trying. So this was a technical challenge. Okay, now it worked. In the center here, I just cut, this is also poplar. It's 3/4 inch thick, so it sits at the same height of these 45-degree sides here. I cut the thickness. I had to experiment with it to where it was, because it was too thick, it wouldn't bend. It would actually snap. So I had to cut it thin, and right now it's about 1/2 inch thick this way, right here. 1/2 inch. I think it might be like 5/8 of an inch. But that was just trial and error because I wanted to make it as wide as possible, but it had to be thin enough to where it would bend without breaking on some of the sharper points of the curve or the arc. Okay, now the real hard part and the science to doing this is getting this consistent arc, because like I said, on these gaps, when the board comes across, it wants to flatten out. So you actually have to have some back tension on these beams. I'm sorry, let me mention one other thing real quick before I go on, because you guys will notice it and you'll be asking your mind. So this piece right here is a triangle piece, just like this. And then on top of it, once I got all these in place, I cut another triangle piece and attached it to the side. And what that gave me is that gave me a flat plane on the top. It strengthened this up a little bit, but it gave me a flat plane on the top to mount what will be the roof portion of this plywood. So I hope that makes sense. So this top piece here is essentially like 2 triangle pieces stacked on top of each other, but I had to do it in a very specific order. Okay. All right. So now the art, so to speak, of getting this curve. Now you guys will notice in some places I have a little wedge right here. This took me hours to lay out these board pieces, right? Here, you'll notice that I notched out this board a little bit. When I set the height of these beams, I just did the best approximation. But as you pull this board across, so you guys can see here, I actually took a file and slightly filed it this way. Reinforced it with a wedge right there, because see how it's sitting at a pretty strong angle to that side. That, I don't know how to describe it. It's just one of those things that you got to take your time. I spent hours running these pieces across, and as I moved them, I would look down it and I would make sure that it's maintaining an arc and nothing is flattening out, and I would adjust it. Once you get one side done, then you have to go to the other side and do measurements, exhaustive measurements. What I would do is, let's see if I can find an example of one here, is I would, like right here, I would set a point, it doesn't matter. I would set a point here, and then I would measure the height there, and then I would go on the opposite side and I would measure the height over there, because you want symmetry on these angles between both sides. I'm doing the best I can, guys, here. I know it's a little hard for me to describe, but this was really hard. This was really hard to get this 45-degree sweeping arc here, but it's going to work out. And again, you know, I believe, this is what I think, and I've had some feedback from other people that a lot of people seem it looks like a good shape, but I think it creates an absolutely unique and beautiful. I can't wait till I get the skin on this to see what this thing looks like. Very, very happy with this. Very, very excited. So, okay, I've rambled enough. I'm going to stop here. Let me cover a couple of the details of this giveaway. And, okay, so there's an asymmetry in this build. Those who identify it in the comments, whoever's first will get this watch. And again, it's not, the asymmetry is not the door is off to one side. Ignore this back section. There's an asymmetry someplace else in this. And I'll tell you this, if you see something and it starts taking you a paragraph to explain it, then you're not identifying it, because you could describe it in a sentence what this asymmetry is. And if you guys watch this video closely, you would have seen it. It's not a mistake. It was on purpose. But anyways, let's talk about the giveaway. I know I have a lot of people in other countries and probably some people in Alaska and Hawaii, but I can only ship to the lower 48. This watch was a review. It's provided by the company, but I will ship it to have, if anyone identifies the asymmetry on my own dime. So can only ship to the lower 48 just because of costs, and I apologize for those who may want to participate that are not in that area. It's just, I'm sure you guys understand. But this is a watch. It's a smart watch. I really like it, and I would normally keep it. I already have an Apple iWatch. I have another Garmin GPS style watch. And I just realized that this would probably just sit, and the battery would eventually it probably would just kind of die eventually after a couple years, and it's kind of a waste. I really like it. This is meant to link up to your phone. And if you guys want to go back, like I said, I think it was a week ago, I did the review. But it has things like heart rate monitor. One thing I actually really liked about it is you can actually take your blood pressure on it. Really nice watch. You'll get the box, you'll get the charger. You'll actually even get a additional metal band, which is something that you'd normally have to buy separately. So I think all in total, this is probably, about $150 value. So, but the way it works, if you live in the lower 48 and you want to identify an asymmetry, it should be a very short 1 sentence, 2 sentences maybe describing it. I'm not sure if this will be easy or hard. But if there's multiple people who identify the same one, whoever puts it in first, of course, is the winner. I'll announce it next week. If someone identifies an asymmetry other than the one I'm thinking of, which is possible, I'm not aware of another one, or at least one that's significant. I apologize if you identify one. I look back and say you're correct, but it's not the one that I want to identify, which is pretty obvious. I'm sorry. There's one specific asymmetry that I'm talking about for this little fun giveaway, I guess you would say, regarding this watch. So, all right, guys. I really appreciate all your feedback, and I'm very excited about this build. I think it looks nice. Let me know what you think, and best of luck. I'll talk to you guys next time.